So I recently heard that you are not a fan of having all your stuff destroyed when you're playing Modern, and you're not really a fan of having friends, but you do want to play a tier 1 deck. So do I have something to show you. Welcome back to GiantMonsterGames. My name is Adrian, and today we are carrying on with deck number 2 of our Budget 2 Tier 1 series, where I take a budget deck such as Bogles or Aura Hexproof, and we show you a budget version which is going to roll in around $60 or 10 ticks if you're playing on MTGO, and then I'm going to show you an $850 or 260 ticks if you're playing on MTGO version, and then the best thing is I'm going to actually show you step by step what to upgrade, what to take out, what to put in, so you can take a clear path if you want to actually play this deck in a competitive format. Now, it would be relatively dishonest of me to just say, hey, I made a tier 1 deck, this deck is totally tier 1. That is not at all what I'm doing. The tier 1 deck that I'm basing this off of is actually a deck that has done well in a medium to large tournament that I pulled from MTG Top 8, so it is not my own design. It is definitely a deck that is already out there, that someone that plays Magic on a more professional basis than I have went out and won, or at least in this case got second in a relatively large tournament. Additionally, I would like to point out that Bogles does make up about 2% of the current meta for Modern, so it is a tier 1 deck. That is basically the definition of a tier 1 deck, is if it makes up 2% or more of the meta, because it is a popular deck. Tiers, for those people that are just maybe not completely clear, a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier whatever, is basically just a categorization of how popular the deck is. Decks tend to be popular because they are powerful, so tier 1 decks make up 2% or more of the format. Okay, enough with the random talking. Let's actually jump into what does this deck actually do? Well, Aura Hexproof, or Bogles as it's more commonly known as, is made up of specifically 3 creatures: Gladecover Scout, Silhana Ledgewalker, and Slippery Bogle. All 3 of these creatures have something in common, and it's the fact that your opponent can't target them. They either have Hexproof or something that is remotely similar to Hexproof, such as Silhana Ledgewalker and Slippery Bogle, which is actually where the deck gets its name from, Bogles, is they have the same text as Hexproof. Slippery Bogle cannot be the target of spells or abilities your opponent controls. So it's really hard for your opponent to kill these things, which means we can safely throw a bunch of enchantments on them, which is going to be the game plan. Speaking of playing enchantments, specifically the Aura variety, we're going to be playing Sram Senior Edificer. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but you guys know the channel well enough that I pronounce things wrong all the time. The whole point and reason why we're playing this guy is whenever we play an aura, equipment, or vehicle, specifically auras in this case, we get to draw a card. So it's going to be a draw engine for us. We're only running 2 because it is a legendary creature. As far as our auras or enchantments are concerned, we are running Hyena Umbra, Snake Umbra, and Spider Umbra as our primary auras. The reason we're playing these, other than the fact that they give us all kinds of cool abilities, is they all have totem armor, which is if the enchanted creature would be destroyed, we remove all damage from it and destroy this aura instead. So this means that if we, say, swing in and our opponent for some reason kills our creature mostly from blocking, I would say, then we actually don't lose the creature. The one downside about all of these things is totem armor does not prevent us from sacrificing creatures. So if we do have to sacrifice one of these creatures with all the auras on it, totem armor doesn't stop that. So this is the big plan. We do have a bunch of other really good enchantments that we can also play. We have Cartouche of Solidarity. Scarab Necklace of Solidarity, basically. So it is the big thing. And oh yeah, second level. So here we have Ethereal Armor, it looks like. Ethereal Armor is the second one. Ethereal Armor is pretty self-explanatory. It gets +1/+1 for each enchantment we control and first strike, so it's really, really strong. The other one seems a little bit more strange, and the reason why I actually want to talk about this one. So the Scarab Necklace of Solidarity, basically when it comes into play, it creates a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance, which is actually the reason we're playing this, because if our opponent, say, plays a Liliana or something that's going to make us sacrifice a creature, we don't want to ever sacrifice our Bogle or one of our actual hexproof creatures. We would rather sacrifice our 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. So that's the whole reason why we're running this. Again, and Ethereal Armor, as I said, is just a really good enchantment. Next we have Gryff's Boon, Rancor, and Unflinching Courage, playing in less values than the other ones, obviously. Gryff's Boon is giving us flying, which is really cool, and it also can be returned from our graveyard to our hand so we can consistently keep playing it if for some reason our creatures do keep dying. It's a really good way of doing that. Rancor, also recursion in the enchantments. If we do end up getting a wipe, we can always hopefully come back by getting another one of our hexproof creatures in play, slapping Rancor back on it because it comes back from our graveyard whenever the creature dies. And then Unflinching Courage is in here largely because having a little bit of lifelink and trample is always going to be nice, helping us finish the game off there. And then we do have a slight bit of removal. We have Celestial Flare. So the reason why we're running Celestial Flare and not some other budget kind of removal spells is because we are more concerned about our opponent attacking or blocking, more specifically blocking one of our creatures. So we can use Celestial Flare to make our opponent sacrifice an attacking or blocking creature. As far as lands are concerned, we are running Fortified Village and Temple Garden. Temple Garden, because it has recently been reprinted, it is actually surprisingly affordable right now. It is like $5-6, which in the grand scheme of it is actually really quite good. And then Fortified Village is a land that comes into play untapped if you reveal a plains or forest from your hand. The rest of our lands, we have 8 forests and 7 plains because you need some regular old lands as well. And that will be the entire main deck. Let me jump over to the sideboard. I'm not going to go into too much detail with sideboard because it always is going to be changing depending on your local meta. To start out with, we have Aegis of the Gods, which is going to give us Hexproof, which is the sole reason why it is in here. Celestial Purge, Fists of Ironwood, which is giving us more tokens to sacrifice to, because sacrificing is our worst enemy. Seal of Primordium Seal. Yeah, it gets rid of, destroys artifacts and enchantments. Neat. And then Tormod's Crypt. And that is the entire deck. If you want to pick this deck up in paper, or any deck on the channel for that matter, go over to Flipside Gaming, use promo code GiantMonsterGames to get 10% off your online purchase. Or if you want to buy this deck on MTGO, there's a link below to Card Hoarder where you can quickly pick up this entire deck fast and easy. Also, both of these help out the channel directly, so I can keep making videos just like this for you guys. Now let's talk about the upgraded version of the deck and what makes it different and better than the budget version. Also, it is really good to point out that 53% of the deck is actually the same between the budget deck and the non-budget deck. Most of the actual high price cost cards are in the mana base, like almost every single one of these budget decks. So in the main deck non-land cards, 69% of the cards are identical, so you own most of what makes this deck unique and how it actually plays. The mana base tends to be what's the most expensive. So what are the actual changes, you ask? Well, Core Spirit Dancer is the first big one. Core Spirit Dancer gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it, so it is basically auras make it really, really big. Also, whenever you cast an aura spell, you draw a card, so it is kind of doing double duty for us. Next is Daybreak Cornet, which is probably the best enchantment in this entire deck. You have to enchant a creature that already has an aura attached to it, which is really easy for us, and then enchanted creature gets +3/+3 and has First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink, which is really freaking good. It just destroys everything. As far as removal, we have Path to Exile. Obviously, we're playing white. Path to Exile is the removal of choice if you were playing white. And then the mana base, which is what I was saying before, is the biggest changes. We have Windswept Heath and Misty Rainforest as some fetch lands out there for us, and we are going to be fetching up stuff like Temple Garden and Dryad Arbiter. And then we have Ravenous Thicket and Horizon Canopy. I mentioned Horizon Canopy actually in the last deck tech as well. Horizon Canopy is really good because it comes into play, we pay a little bit of life, we get a little bit of mana, and then if we get to the mid game, we can sacrifice it to draw a card, which is always really fun. Ravenous Thicket just gives us both green and white mana, that's the whole reason. I'm not going to go too much into the actual sideboard. The big thing that is different in the sideboard between this one and the other one is Leyline of Sanctity. Leyline of Sanctity is super duper important for a Bogles deck because we can't have our opponent doing something like Thought Seizing our opening hand, which is really, really bad to get rid of one of our creatures, or targeting us to make us sacrifice it. Liliana of the Veil tends to be our worst nightmare, and we never ever want to see it. So Leyline of Sanctity tends to be the way we get around all of that. There are 4 of them in the sideboard, and it is probably the best upgrade. I have also, quite honestly, seen people running Leyline of Sanctity in the main deck in Bogles, which is insane to me, but it seems to work, which is why the deck is probably tier 1. And there you go, that is the entire upgraded deck. Let's actually talk about what you're going to be taking out and what you're going to be putting in as you decide you want to upgrade this deck. So, to start out with, Core Spirit Dancer obviously is going to be coming in. You're going to be taking out Sram, Senior, Edificer, 2 of them, and Silhana Ledgewalker. This is going to be the easiest upgrade for you. Obviously, Silhana Ledgewalker stays in until you have your 3rd Core Spirit Dancer, because obviously you would like more hexproof creatures until you have 3 Core Spirit Dancers. You don't want to go for 4, go for 3. That's all you really want. If you want to upgrade some of your auras, putting in 4 Daybreak Cornets and another Hyena Umbra is going to be the best bet. Taking out 1 Cartouche of Solidarity. I'm sorry, guys, it's not going to happen. 1 Gryff's Boon, 1 Unflinching Courage, and then 2 Snake Umbras. Obviously, 1 Snake Umbra is actually being taken out to put in 1 Hyena Umbra if you're kind of getting to that point. As far as removal, quite easy. Path to Exile goes in, Celestial Flare comes out. And then we have some really big changes when it comes to the mana base. Obviously, Razorgrave Thicket, Temple Garden, Windswept Heath, and Misty Rainforest is all going to be replacing our Fortified Village, and then a bunch of our forests and plains, kind of just 50-50, split them down the middle. And then when you want to get around to putting in your Dryad Arbiter and your Horizon Canopies, which they're recommending running 4 of them, which is the lion's share of this deck when it comes to budget, you're just going to be taking out forests and plains for that. And then the last thing to mention is Arius of the Gods is actually going to come out, and you're going to put in Ley Lines of Sanctity. That's the one thing you're going to be replacing sideboards wise. Otherwise, sideboards change a lot there. The thing that changes the most, so I'm not going to go into any other sideboard changes. You can take a look at the upgraded version of the deck, link in the description below if you actually want to take a look at that. And that concludes this episode of Budget 2 Tier 1, where I did Bogles, which is my least favorite deck. I just find it really boring to play. Speaking of playing though, let's go play some games, and I'll just make a point of complaining a whole bunch while I play them. But until next time, my name's Adrian, this is GiantMonsterGames, thanks for watching, and don't forget to game like a giant monster. I would like to throw a huge shout out to all of the Patreon supporters that have been still supporting this channel even though I've had to take a 3-month hiatus. You guys are awesome, thank you for supporting, and if you want to see more of the videos about this exact series, there are some videos you can click right here to do that right now.